What I find very hard to swallow is something that is often presented as fact, but which is, in fact, pure speculation. What is often presented as fact is that consciousness, awareness, emerges from the chemicals in the brain. This strikes me as magical thinking, because I've studied chemistry, I've studied physics, and the notion of having complex configurations of energy and matter come together, and out of that comes consciousness, strikes me as a wild, blind leap of faith. Where's your evidence? The mind-body relationship to modern science remains a complete mystery. That's just a fact. The many people pretend as if they already know the mind is simply a function of the brain. This is simply a belief, like a belief in God or belief in fairies or angels. It's just a belief. There's no evidence for that, actually. That they are related, yes. That consciousness actually is generated by the brain? Consciousness is obviously not physical. The mind is obviously not physical. This is just empiricism. When you observe your mind, you see it has no physical characteristics. When you try to measure or detect the mind with any instrument of technology, mind or consciousness, no signal. So all the evidence points to the fact that mind, consciousness are not physical. And if one studies physics, and I have, there is no branch of physics that discusses how physical phenomena can give rise to non-physical phenomena. Nowhere. It's complete speculation. It's blind faith. So that's what I find difficult to believe. All these people that says, oh, I'm a realist, when you're dead, you're just dead. Well, scientists have no idea, literally no idea, where consciousness emerges from. When does a baby become conscious? Where does the consciousness come from? From the father's sperm, from the mother's egg, from food? Where does it come from? They have no idea. So to recognize, first of all, that scientifically we are totally ignorant about the nature of consciousness, its origins, and what happens at death, is a good way to honestly begin the investigation. Because there's a lot of pretense, a lot of speculation presented as fact, which is frankly fraudulent. I use tough words. But when you have merely an opinion and you say this is a scientific fact, that's fraudulent. So for starters, science has no answers. Only assumptions, only beliefs, often unquestioned. That's for religious fundamentalists. That should not be for science. If we ask, where does consciousness come from? We have three large options. Consciousness comes, that is, in a newborn baby, a baby still in mother's womb. Clearly it's already conscious by the last trimester, clearly. But where did that consciousness come from? That mental awareness, that experience of being aware. One possibility, it comes from nothing. Well, how can anything come from nothing? That makes no sense. Secondly, consciousness, which is clearly non-physical, it's a very important point, has no physical characteristics, cannot be measured physically. That's all the evidence we should need. Consciousness is not physical. Then a possibility is it emerges from physical. So tell me the branch of physics or chemistry that says, oh yes, this is how physical phenomena can give rise to non-physical phenomena. There's no such branch. It's complete speculation. So that makes no sense at all. And then thirdly, consciousness, human consciousness, emerges from a subtler dimension of consciousness. So clearly my human mind, my human consciousness, arises in dependence upon my human brain. No question. If my brain is damaged, my human mind doesn't function as well. Damage it more and more and more, I don't have a human mind. I become vegetative or I'm dead. That's very clear. But we've known this for a long time. This is not breaking news. And so we know there's a dependency here. So I'm 68. It is certain that my consciousness, my mind, did not exist anywhere in the universe 70 years ago. That's certain. And I think we can be very certain that 70 years from now, my consciousness, Alan Wallace's consciousness, or mind will not exist anywhere in the world. 70 years from now, I think quite likely I'm going to be dead, right? And so, where does my consciousness come from? Where does it come, and where does it go to? That it comes from nothing, goes to nothing, makes no sense. How can anything come from nothing? There's nothing there. How can it come physical? There's no physics or chemistry that ever allows for that. Not possible. So we can stop. That violates all laws of physics and chemistry. So then a possibility is there's a subtler continuum of consciousness that is more like a stem cell. A stem cell is not yet a neuron or a liver cell or a blood cell, but in the right environment it can become configured as. What if there's a continuum of stem consciousness that carries on from lifetime to lifetime, and right now it's configured independent upon my brain as a human consciousness, human mind. But when the brain ceases to function, then that consciousness doesn't become nothing. It goes back to the stem continuum and carries on. So there's a theory that's better than the other two. It's much more scientific than the other two, which regard either crazy thinking or sheer speculation. But then we can ask, is there any evidence? There are many materialistic theories about mind, and not a single one of them can be tested. The mind is the brain, the mind's a function of the brain, the mind's an emergent property of the brain, etc. They're just beliefs. No one has ever tested these beliefs. So they're not even scientific. Whereas the assertion or the hypothesis that the human mind emerges from a subtler continuum that goes back in time and will go forward in time beyond this lifetime, that can be tested and has been tested. Scientifically and contemplatively. Contemplatives achieve very deep states of samadhi where they access that deep state of consciousness. We call it the substrate consciousness, or simply the subtle continuum of mental consciousness. They can access memories from past life. That's happened many, many times. But that can be tested scientifically. This is not faith. I mean, it can be faith, but it can be tested. Are they accessing memories, or is it sheer fantasy? Or many, many children around the world claim to have past life recall. For 40 years at the University of Virginia, they've been studying this rigorously, and they found very compelling evidence. So in terms of scientific evidence, that's the only evidence I see. If the Christians are right, that you go from here and you go to heaven or hell, it may be true, but there's no scientific evidence and no way to test that. The materialists believe, oh, it all comes from matter, it goes back, but they can't test that either. That's just like believing in heaven or hell. They can't test that either. Whereas this theory can be tested, should be tested, there's truth to be known, and all we need to do is have the scientists and contemplatives come together, which we are planning in Tuscany, and then discover what is true.